People who have snapped on a bully at school. What's your story? 5th grade. This dude who always picked on me was kicking my seat in assembly. And I was having a terrible week, and this was my last straw. I punched him in the face, but I wasn't satisfied with the first punch because it felt weak. So I figured I'm already going to be in trouble, so I went back for a second, better punch that felt worth getting in trouble over. Also, this was a DARE assembly, which was about saying no to drugs and violence, so I basically learned nothing. I was being bullied for like a month. When I was 13 or 14, some guy from my class started messing with me, pushing, hair grabbing, neck slapping, stuff like that, and I didn't know how to handle it. One of his friends from another class, a guy the first had never spoken to before, tried it once and I instinctively punched him in the face. Bullying stopped. If that random guy didn't do what he did, I don't know how I would have put an end to it. To be honest, I smashed a kid across the face with a stapler because he hit me all the time and I got tired of it. I was in 7th grade. Didn't get caught. My second in France, like 15 years old, bully decided to sit next to me in class, repeatedly whispered insults to me, and at one point I snapped, took his head up and bashed it into the desk. I think I would have been in deep garbage had his textbook not been there. Needless to say, I got kicked out of that class and had to change English group. A couple of bullies like to do monkey in the middle with me. Didn't take me long to figure out the solution was to simply tackle one of the bullies and start punching. In 4th grade, this kid named Nick used to punch me every day at recess. I went home one day crying about it, and my dad told me to punch him back. So the next day when Nick came around to punch me, I whipped around and just beat the snot out of him. Monsieur absolutely wailed on him. Monsieur, one of the teachers, noticed and took us to the principal's office, and we got off with warnings. After that, Nick never punched me again, but would make sure I could get to the front of the line for the drinking fountain and picked me first for any sports game he was team captain for. 6th grade. A few days before end of school year, beat his butt and didn't stop even with teachers saying so. The bully stopped, but I was sick and tired of his garbage. Lucky me, I didn't have to come in for those remaining 3 days. Best of all was that my parents were on my side. For context, I'm 6 feet 5 inches, and have been since high school. There was a girl I was friends with who had a boyfriend. There was nothing going on between us, but her boyfriend was older and used to call me names and throw garbage at me in the halls. I'm not a particularly confrontational person, so I let it go on like that for a while. There was a day when he knocked my books out of my hand and I had had enough. He wasn't nearly as big as I was, so I picked him up by his shirt and slammed him against a locker. The bullying stopped. Edit. A word. I was 11. He was 9. But he beat up my 6-year-old sister on the bus home one day, and none of the adults would do anything about it. So after we got off the bus, I kicked his ass. He never bothered my sister or any other kid ever again. I was 7 and I was a nice kid with average grades, and this one bully that was taller than me, he used to be any typical bully, like trip you on your lunch and push your head for no apparent reason. I was getting annoyed that I felt the red heat go all over my body. I looked at him and told him to stop. I looked at him. He pushes me to the ground. I stopped and kicked his tables and punched his nose with all my force. His nose started to bleed and I was sent to the office. My mom had this thing where if they started it, then she'll pretend that she's mad at me at school and come home saying, "Congrats." Edit. Thanks for the stranger who gave me the silver medal. Have a nice day. A group of boys thought it was hilarious to keep our football and stop us from getting it back. After it rolled towards them on the school field, they kept passing it between themselves and picking it up and trying to keep it away from us. After trying for about a minute to get the ball from them by running after it, one of them picked the ball up and kept moving it away, trying to keep it out of my reach. I took a few steps back. no longer interested in trying to not hurt them, and did a goal kick on the ball. I kicked his hand in the process, and the ball smacked him in the face and gave him a bloody nose. He didn't even try to react. He just turned and walked away with his tail between his legs. The bully would always grab my butt or slap my neck, say rude things about my nationality, and insult me. I often told him to stop that, but he never did. For a year and a half, once, in a lecture, he came to my desk and grabbed my ass. I had a really bad day that day too. The moment he grabbed my ass, I saw red. I was mad. I stood up and looked him in the eye. I took his head and smashed it against the wall with all I had. Nothing serious happened to him except for the teacher being mad at him for bothering me. I was a quiet and good-hearted kid, and the teacher knew that. Edit. I'm a guy, and that butt wasn't even gay. Or maybe he was, but never admitted it. In middle school we were hanging around before classes started, and this guy who used to be my friend came up behind me and put a condom in my mouth. I turned around, pushed him up against the wall, and punched him in the face. The whole school heard about it, and they were all backing me up for the rest of the day. I didn't even get in trouble. Edit. Because I'm getting some upvotes, I'll expand a bit. He was super embarrassed and tried to negotiate with me, saying, "You have to let me punch you back to make up for it, or save his honor," or some garbage. People would not stop teasing him about it. I think that when the teachers heard about it, they thought it was funny and I had a good rep with them, so they let it slide. I had been bullied all year long by this guy, and it was the last week of 8th or 9th grade. Comes up to me and says something about my clothes or something, and I just saw red. I turn around and hit him with a palm strike to the face. The bottom of my hand connected right under his nose. He doubled over and I bolted. I heard later his lip got stuck in his braces and he had to go to the doctor to fix it. I got a stern talking to about not hitting people, although my teachers were aware of the verbal bullying. Not at school, but I was 12 and a kid on my block constantly challenged me to fight him because he knew I didn't want to. So it was a great way for this chubby, incompetent brat to show off. One day, outside the convenience store, to his surprise I accepted. He came towards me and I basically just lifted up my leg and kicked him in the stomach. Honestly, he just bounced off my foot. In shock, he came at me again. This repeated about 3 times as the expression of disbelief on his face became more pathetically pronounced. He finally gave up and ran home past my house, telling my mother, who happened to be outside, that I beat him up. But she already knew about his behavior towards me, so as soon as I explained what happened, it was all good. He wasn't actually hurt physically, just emotionally. We both learned a good lesson that day, and he actually grew up to be a decent guy from what I could tell. At 5th grade, can't remember what specifically caused me to snap, but after spending the last 5 years being continually harassed, bullied, and assaulted by a specific boy, I'd had enough. I calmly walked to the mounted pencil sharpener at the back of the class and sharpened my pencil to a very fine tip. Then, I walked behind said bully, and in a downward motion slashed him across the entirety of his back in one fluid motion. Obviously, I got a truckload of garbage for what I did. Principal insinuated to my mother that the parents of the other boy may want to press charges for my harming of their pride and joy. My mother, bless her heart, retorted back, "If that's the case, perhaps I should press charges, considering how often my son has been coming home with cuts, bruises and welts administered at their boys' hands without repercussions from your staff." The principal moonwalked out of that conversation so fluffing fast he still was read the riot act at home, though. Got drilled into me that what I did was use a weapon to harm someone, and that it would never be tolerated at any level. Grounded for a very, very long time. Bully gave me space. For a while anyway. Went back to his usual torment after a couple weeks, minus any physical contact. High school. One girl made my life hell. I didn't even know her or fully understand why she targeted me. She tried to run me over and told cops I walked in front of her car. One day walking up the stairs, she proceeded to taunt me, hitting me in the back with objects and calling me names. I stopped, turned around and punched her in the nose. She landed on her back in the landing. I just stood over her and said, "What now, female doggy?" She never said one word to me after that.